Hello, Dr. Vicki Peterson here. I wanted to talk to you today about high protein diets. Several years ago, the Atkins diet was all the rage, and if you participated in that, maybe you enjoyed some rapid weight loss. Since then, we've seen some of the liabilities associated with that particular diet. But currently, the Paleo Diet is in the news a lot. There's a lot of people following that diet. There are some things about that diet I think are good. As far as gluten is avoided, so that I think is always a good idea. It also is a proponent of eating vegetables and some fruits, which the Atkins diet was not. But with all the benefits of the paleo, the liability perhaps is the fact that it is a high protein diet. No matter how you slice it, it's high protein. And what's the problem with that? So research from a journal called Cell Metabolism came out very recently, and they looked at over 6,000 people, specifically middle age, so late 30s into early 60s, mid 60s, and specifically in these 6,000 people, some were on a high protein diet, some were on a moderate protein, and some were on a lower protein diet. And if you have more than 20% of your calories from protein, that's considered high protein, and then it whittles down from there, and 10% or less is considered low protein. But what they found was pretty dramatic and not a standalone finding. So these are findings that have come out in research before, but this was a very big study, it's a very recent study, and it really solidified these warnings about eating protein, particularly animal protein. What I'm about to say was not true if that protein came from a plant source. So what they found out was that individuals, adults eating a high protein diet were 4 times more likely to die of cancer than the group that was eating a low protein diet. Their risk for diabetes also raised. Additionally, they were twice as likely to die early compared to the people on a low protein diet. So cancer risk fourfold, diabetes risk increased, and then twice as likely to die early from this high protein diet. You know, it's interesting because there's so much that is said about diets, you know, high carb, high protein, low protein. But there are some truisms that we've definitely come to understand when we talk about diet. Simple carbohydrates, highly refined grains, sugar, white flour, never a good idea. I'm not saying you can't ever have a piece of dark chocolate, my preferred source of sugar, but for the most part, avoiding those highly refined types of simple carbohydrates is a good idea. It's going to put weight on you, it's going to increase your risk for pretty much all degenerative diseases, and not great. Now, what happened with protein? It turns out that particularly animal protein raises a certain hormone that's known to shorten life and increase cancer. We've seen this for a while. I talked about it a lot when I talk about dairy products and red meat and why you should lessen the amount of those. So this research is very supportive of what we've known for a while, and by the way, that's called the insulin growth factor number 1. The researchers actually took 2,000 of the 6,000 people and measured that insulin growth factor, and sure enough, they saw that as it increased, the risk for these diseases increased. So they took a little subset of that grouping, 2,000 people, and saw that correlation. Once again, this is not a new finding. We've known this for a while. So you can definitely get your protein from plant sources, and as far as the amount of protein, it's very limited. So if you look at a 150-pound adult and how much protein they should consume, it's about 0.02 ounces per pound of body weight. So that ends up to be in a 150-pound adult 3 ounces. Now here's my hand. If we had a chicken breast that sort of barely covered the palm, not to the edges, but sort of barely covered the palm of my hand, that would be a 3-ounce chicken breast. That would be a 150-pound adult's protein consumption for the entire day. And so I think if you're a typical American and you like your protein, you know that you might do that 2 and 3 times a day easily. And that's certainly what these researchers found, is that Americans easily overeat their protein by 2 and 3 times. I think they said twice in the study. So we really need to look at lowering our animal protein, looking at the quality of the animals that you're eating, as far as, do they have hormones, do they have they been fed a poor diet because you're getting what they eat when you're eating their flesh. So are they eating GMO corn and soy? Are they being fed a lot of antibiotics? Are they being fed a lot of hormones? So certainly looking into the quality of the protein you're eating, but then also eating a lot less of it. Now, if you're a young growing child, you need more protein, and that insulin growth factor hormone I mentioned earlier is used for growth, but when we stop growing as an adult, then that's why we need so much less hormone. So that hormone turns into kind of an evil, causing cancer and lowering life expectancy as we get older. When we're younger, we do need some protein. And what the researchers pointed out is, in the elderly, people over the age of 65, people are starting to lose muscle mass, and they're starting to get frail, and the size of their body is decreasing. If you have elderly parents, maybe you've seen that. For those people, they do need a little bit more protein to kind of help keep their muscle mass intact, so they're not getting so frail. But for the majority of us as adults, once you stop growing, all the way up until 65, 70, maybe when some frail type of stuff starts kicking in, we don't need that much protein, and we certainly don't need it in the form of animal protein. So look at your diet, evaluate it. The last word I want to leave with you is, I think, very powerful, which is a quote from one of the researchers. He said, typical bodies are going to kick out a cancer cell or a pre-cancer cell. The question is, what's your body going to do with it? You see, so what he was saying is, the higher the protein diet, the more likely that cancer cell is going to take off and turn into a cancer problem, and the lower the protein diet, the more likely it's going to be handled by your immune system and not turn into something evil like cancer, diabetes, or a shorter life from any other disease. So really something to think about, I think, and really a very powerful statement. So I'll leave you with that, and please send me your questions. I do love to hear from you, and until next time, I wish you very good health.